The massive, historic theatre in the vibrant city of Glasgow is shaking heavily with the absolute massive enthusiasm of thousands of densely packed spectators, entirely perfectly. They have gathered completely patiently to deeply witness a young boy who previously only served ordinary restaurant tables in this exact city successfully step onto the illuminated stage as a true global television superstar. But the absolute biggest massive shock of the beautiful night was completely not the highly dazzling stage design or the completely soul-crushing vocal quality. The biggest massive surprise was the unexpected physical presence of the legendary television industry figure sitting quietly in the front row. His massive presence completely absorbed all the air, officially proving that this night would completely become an incredibly permanent, timeless television history, completely perfectly safely. To truly deeply dive into the profound emotional depths of this highly extraordinary, entirely cinematic achievement perfectly safely, we must aggressively retrace the historical foundation of his incredibly painful past, completely perfectly. When he first set foot in the massive United Kingdom in 2022 to highly successfully strictly study beautiful musical theatre, he arrived entirely empty-handed with absolutely nothing but a massive, deep human dream.
The incredibly harsh life he completely had to actively endure was entirely unimaginably brutal and nearly completely destroyed his absolute human sanity. He had to fiercely force himself to deeply work exhausting late-night shifts as a simple restaurant waiter just to completely successfully survive in the middle of a totally freezing city. Those lonely, quiet city streets completely became the absolute silent witnesses to his heavy emotional pain. However, every single heavy tear slowly but securely built a massively solid emotional fortress of absolute resilience, completely, perfectly, beautifully, entirely safely. The completely monumental turning point in his incredibly massive human life officially finally arrived in early 2026 when he completely bravely stood directly on that massive global television audition stage. He completely successfully poured absolutely all his incredibly deep emotional pain, massive past rejections, and entirely profound human suffering directly into completely every single incredibly beautiful vocal note that he perfectly sang. The highly famous television judge Simon Cowell, who is deeply known for his extremely cold television demeanor, was completely unable to entirely withstand that highly magical emotional human wave entirely perfectly.
Without completely waiting for any of his fellow celebrity judges to openly speak, he actively leaned heavily forward and forcefully entirely slammed that completely magical golden buzzer, perfectly showering the entire massive stage with completely gorgeous falling gold confetti. He completely successfully made permanent television history by absolutely securing a deeply massive second golden buzzer, proving his absolute vocal talent could absolutely never be stopped. Just exactly when the absolute total ultimate victory seemed completely perfectly secure within his incredibly tight human grasp perfectly safely, a completely highly devastating technical voting controversy suddenly officially emerged and completely successfully destroyed his massive human dreams perfectly entirely. The strictly official television voting application system highly brutally completely strictly demanded the exclusive use of a highly local registered cellular telephone number perfectly entirely. This incredibly brutal heavy technical limitation completely actively effectively heavily locked out incredibly massive millions of his deeply loyal passionate international supporters from all across Asia who incredibly deeply wanted to provide their absolute full support perfectly. This tragic voting system limitation entirely successfully paralyzed his greatest deep human strength exactly during the absolute most critical television moment of his entire beautiful human life.
He had to swallow a bitter pill and end the competition in an agonizingly close fourth place, standing heartbroken as the massive golden confetti successfully fell directly for someone else completely safely forever. After that incredibly devastating deep night of massive television defeat, incredibly wild, cheap internet gossip completely exploded wildly out of absolute human control across multiple global digital social media platforms perfectly. Many completely actively deeply assumed that his completely deep human mental state was entirely totally destroyed and that he had completely entirely given up completely forever on the massive global music entertainment industry completely successfully.
He completely, actively, deeply, truly chose to completely safely disappear and absolutely lock himself securely inside his incredibly small, deeply quiet apartment perfectly. He completely, actively cut off entirely all human contact with the massive outside world to completely, deeply heal his incredibly deep emotional human wounds entirely, perfectly, safely. The heavy, freezing silence made millions of his massive, dedicated fans feel incredibly, totally, deeply anxious. But on the first day of June, he completely broke that absolute massive silence with a deeply elegant message. Instead of spreading heavy hatred regarding the highly unfair voting system, he absolutely radiated incredible grace, completely, perfectly, directly, completely.
While the completely massive general public was entirely deeply still completely heavily mourning his completely tragic devastating television defeat entirely perfectly completely safely, an incredibly massive highly beautiful absolute factual industry truth completely officially successfully emerged and entirely immediately perfectly changed the absolute entire complete trajectory of his completely highly beautiful professional human career entirely forever completely beautifully. The incredibly deeply massive, highly prestigious, elite, formal, completely successful producers from the completely, absolutely, incredibly massive, highly legendary, deeply successful global theatrical musical theater company completely, actively, successfully, carefully monitored his entirely beautiful, incredibly massive, highly perfect, deeply phenomenal television performances completely perfectly. They absolutely, actively, completely, deeply, successfully recognized that his total, complete, incredibly massive, highly perfect, heavy vocal control and his incredibly real, deep emotional depth was an absolute pure masterpiece. Without absolutely taking the standard completely boring pop music route, he was completely officially recruited to entirely heavily exclusively join a highly prestigious completely elite theatrical production entirely perfectly forever completely safely absolutely.
As his incredibly massive, absolutely gorgeous, deep global popularity completely actively continuously skyrocketed, completely sharply, just exactly like a beautiful fast-shooting meteor, entirely actively heavily across the incredibly massive, beautiful dark night sky, completely perfectly successfully. We must completely, entirely, actively, aggressively, completely safely destroy an incredibly massive, completely false, entirely misleading internet piece of absolute digital misinformation that completely actively continues to actively deeply spread incredibly massively wildly, completely directly out of absolute human control, perfectly strictly. A highly massive, wild, entirely, absolutely, incredibly absurd internet digital viral social media rumor actively, completely, entirely, successfully, heavily claims he is totally secretly married to a highly massive, incredibly popular digital internet celebrity figure perfectly. This absolutely, entirely cheap rumor is 100% completely, totally, entirely physically fake, completely, entirely manufactured, and entirely deeply has absolute zero foundation of any factual truth completely perfectly securely. The continuously circulated heavy wedding photographs were actually just pure visual cinematic properties for an old music video entirely perfectly safely completely forever directly. Just completely exactly when his incredibly massive, beautiful, highly loyal, deeply passionate, dedicated fans entirely, actively, deeply thought that this incredibly massive, completely beautiful, entirely magnificent, incredible television year could completely, absolutely, entirely, never, absolutely, successfully, possibly get any completely, entirely, deeply, perfectly, totally, absolutely, massively, highly, completely, successfully better, entirely, completely, actively, perfectly, safely. An entirely, incredibly, completely, massive, absolutely, highly, entirely, deeply, absolute formal entertainment industry announcement, completely, totally, heavily dropped, absolutely, entirely, heavily, directly, actively, onto the completely massive entire public, absolutely, entirely, exactly, like an incredibly massive, absolute, total, completely giant explosive bomb, entirely, completely, safely, successfully, perfectly.
The highly respected, entirely massive, completely official National Reality Television Awards ceremony, completely officially actively entirely released their highly completely absolutely exclusive incredibly massive elite nomination roster, completely perfectly safely.
His incredibly massive, beautiful human name completely, actively, proudly, firmly, heavily, entirely stands directly, perfectly, securely as a completely, absolutely, highly massive, beautiful official nominee, completely, directly for the absolutely beautiful best performance, entirely, perfectly, safely, forever, entirely, beautifully, completely, totally, completely, directly, forever. Riding this completely, incredibly massive, highly, absolutely, entirely, the completely, totally unstoppable, completely, absolute formal wave of highly successful, absolutely, entirely deep theatrical theater professional, completely, entirely massive, complete human success, completely, actively, totally, deeply, perfectly, smoothly, actively, beautifully, entirely, successfully, perfectly, safely. He completely, entirely, officially, successfully, completely, proudly, bravely, officially, completely, successfully confirmed entirely, clearly, perfectly, smoothly, totally, deeply, successfully, entirely, strongly, that he would absolutely, completely, entirely, successfully be completely, totally, entirely, actively staging his completely, absolutely, totally, incredibly massive, deeply, highly gorgeous, completely, entirely, absolutely, totally amazing, entirely, complete, massive, totally independent, highly beautiful, totally lovely, absolutely, totally, utterly, purely, massive, deep, complete, absolutely true, highly active, entirely real, individual, live, human musical concert, perfectly, actively. This completely, entirely, incredibly massive, heavily deep, emotional, completely perfectly human geographical decision was incredibly beautiful, poetic, and completely carried incredibly massive deep meaning. The entirely massive cold city that completely actively originally successfully completely isolated him, now absolutely entirely warmly, completely intensely, heavily, totally safely celebrates his entirely massive victory, completely perfectly, absolutely safely, entirely directly. The completely, entirely massive, highly, totally anticipated, deeply, completely, entirely beautiful, completely, absolutely magical evening of the absolutely, completely incredible, completely, absolutely, entirely true, completely, fully gorgeous, beautiful, perfect, deeply, completely, incredibly successful, totally, absolute, complete, entirely flawless, completely, beautifully massive human musical absolute concert, finally, completely, entirely, absolutely, truly, totally, beautifully, smoothly, absolutely, perfectly, perfectly, clearly, entirely, successfully, absolutely, completely, safely, actively, finally arrived perfectly. When he completely, entirely, actively, successfully, heavily stepped completely, bravely, directly forward to completely, safely, actively, entirely, proudly radiate his completely, entirely massive, highly, absolutely, totally, incredibly massive, beautiful, entirely perfect, absolutely gorgeous, entirely pure vocal charm, entirely, fully, perfectly, safely.
The absolutely, completely, entirely, incredibly massive, deeply, totally, completely, absolutely, utterly, highly, completely, entirely, cinematic, deeply, completely, incredibly, jaw-dropping, completely, entirely, totally, entirely, amazing, massive, perfectly, absolute, true human moment of the entirely whole, beautiful, incredible night, completely, entirely, actively, heavily, perfectly, entirely, absolutely, fully, successfully happened, entirely, successfully, safely, directly before he sang a note perfectly. Simon Cowell completely proudly sat entirely perfectly inside the direct completely front row, absolutely completely forever, directly completely safely entirely perfectly.